It's been December 2022 since Newcastle United claimed victory over Bournemouth. And in this Sunday coming up, can Newcastle United and Eddie Howe change this? And most of all, how can they change this? Find out right here on Toon Tactics TV, folks.
Brilliant from Sham. And now Murphy could take on the shot. Fabian Sham wins!
Okay. How are you all folks doing? I hope everyone is blessed and having a great start to this morning or evening or afternoon, wherever you are. But here in the UK, it's certainly a morning. It is my first morning show, speaking of. So with so many games Newcastle are playing, we've had to spread our shows around. So I'm doing a bit of a test today, a little bit of a pilot, doing my first show this early, UK time anyway. But it might be suitable for you, whoever you are. We know we've got folks from South Africa listening in sometimes, from Florida, from different places around the world. So this time might be really suitable for you. It might be something that we do a little bit more consistently going forward. We'll see. We will see. But otherwise, let me know how you are, no matter where you're listening from, what you're up to. Do let me know. Right, guys. So look, we're playing Bournemouth this Sunday, straight after the game against obviously Barcelona. And it's another test in the sense of I'm thinking like this, because what obviously we need to be asking ourselves is now we're going to learn is how deep and how good is our squad? What is the quality? What's the strength and quality of our squad? Because I think we're going to have to do some rotations somewhere, possibly. We will see how good it is. And also, even if we don't rotate certain players and we keep a lot of the players in, we're going to have to show energy. We're going to have to show strength in this game against Bournemouth. It's difficult enough with Bournemouth, really. When we don't have Champions League games, we're playing on the back of. We're still finding it tough to beat them, and it will show. Actually, speaking of, our record against them has not been great, and these are times when we haven't necessarily, like I said, we haven't been playing on the back of Champions Leagues and everything else. If I go straight to the head-to-heads, where is it? Newcastle, Bournemouth. We're going to speak in the show. Actually, we're going to be, as always, speaking about what we're doing now, past record, current form for Bournemouth, and as well as as well as ourselves. We're going to look at their style of play and where strengths and weaknesses, and then we're going to give our predictions right at the end as well. But look, head-to-heads. And really helpfully as well, FBref have got FBref have got who they think would be in the starting lineup as well. Just one moment. If you guys can hear it in my voice, I've got a hay fever, I think, mixed with a bit of a cold as well. So I'm going to blow my nose quickly. I didn't want you to hear that. So, oh, have I gone off? I hope I haven't gone off. Can you guys hit and make sure you guys can let me know if you can hear me, folks? I look like I'm blank on the screen, which isn't good. Let me just double check. I hope everyone can hear me, but on my screen it seems like I've frozen. So I don't know if it's a thing for everybody else or if it's just for me. I'm gonna quickly find out. But as I was saying at the top of the show, let me see if it can be heard. Yeah, you can hear me. Brilliant. Okay, it's a blank screen for some reason. So, and it's not my camera this time. My camera is actually working. Here we go. Not sure why it's a blank screen. What's going on? Let me just take this in and out and see what happens. As always, a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we will get through it as we always do. Make sure that we get ourselves right. As I was, here we go. Just want to fix the camera quickly. Here we go. Can we get ourselves back on? All right, lovely jubbly. Fix the camera. All right, so head to head. We haven't beaten the Bournemouth literally since December 2022, right at the bottom of my screen there. And that was in the League Cup. I didn't even realize that was the League Cup. So I need to even back up a little bit. Has it really been that long in the Premier League? It has. Last time at our ground, they beat us 4-1. We drew 1-1 at their ground last year as well. Was lucky there, I think. Then 2-2, then 2-0 to Bournemouth, then 1-1. Yeah, December 1-0. That was the League Cup. So the last time we beat Bournemouth was 4-1 in 2020. Goodness gracious. So it's even worse than I thought. So our record against Bournemouth is not good. So what can we do to change things around? What can we do to turn things around? And how can we do it? That's going to be absolutely pivotal. But let's talk about Bournemouth. Let's talk about how they're currently doing, current form and everything else. We've got the preview on here. So this is before we go into their. So if we look at their form, just scrolling down quickly, make sure you guys can still see that. Yeah, you can. Let's see. So team form at the moment for Bournemouth is, I think so they've beaten Brighton. Like the last game, they beat Brighton 2-1 away, which is a good victory for them. Sorry, it was Brighton at home. They beat Brighton at home. Then they beat. Before that, they beat Tottenham at home at their ground, at Tottenham's ground. I watched that game. That was a really, really good performance from Bournemouth. They came across as if they were the home team, to be honest. Their infamous press, Bournemouth's infamous press, was in absolute full effect in that game as well. They were direct when they needed to be as well as putting men into the middle of the field and trying to take control as much as possible. They showed the energy. They ran Tottenham ragged. It was surprising for me in terms of I thought Tottenham coming off the Man City game that they'll be a little bit more up for it, and I think they were up for it. But I think Tottenham just took the life out of them. To be honest, Tottenham took the life out of them. Before that, though, Bournemouth did lose at home to Brentford. And just before that, they beat Wolves at home as well, 1-0. And their first game of the season, they lost 4-2 against Liverpool. I watched that game as well. I thought Semenyo was very, very impressive in that game. We're going to talk about him as well, especially his ball playing ability, his ball carrying ability. Is like his biggest strength, I think. I think we know especially in that last game when they beat us 4-1. He absolutely tore Livramento apart in that game, in my view, as well. So there's a lot of threats, there's a lot of danger there. For ourselves in the last 5 games, we obviously lost 2 games. That being Barcelona and Liverpool, which isn't bad, and drew 2 against Leeds and against Villa, both away games, and we won 1 game versus Wolves at home. So overall, let me know. I mean, overall, in terms of our form and everything else going forward, I do think that we are. I do think if someone was to read out those results, and it doesn't look great, it doesn't look, compelling. But I do want to say, in my opinion, anyway, Villa, the first game of the season, was an away game, which a lot of people were worried about because Villa did, still had a decent season last year, even though they didn't get Champions League football. And well, I think they got the same points as us as well, so it was still seen as a good away game. The Liverpool game, obviously they came out victors. Liverpool did, but we know that we all, we showed more than a good account of ourselves in that game. Leeds were away, still as an away game, still a decent draw. Could we have done better in that game in some aspects, especially in the final third? Yeah, I think the focal point of a striker was missing in that, but still a decent draw. And obviously we beat Wolves at home, and that's with a striker and performing well. So putting all those two things together in that game was good. And obviously Barcelona, I think we it was a good learning experience. I think we showed more than enough that we could hold our own. And so overall, my overall feeling is that we're performing well. Sometimes we're not getting the rub of the green in terms of the results, but we are performing well. And so we're still coming into this game against Bournemouth in decent nick, I think. But obviously Bournemouth are looking very, very good in terms of their form and how they're playing. And it's good to see in the chat, Adrian Pickett, God bless you. Good to see you, sir. He says, we'll have to bring back Bruce to get a result down there. Was it Bruce? Was it under Bruce that we got a result? Goodness gracious. So that's absolutely crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So look, that's the two forms. I think if I was to put it into colours, I think Bournemouth are probably coming in red hot form. Playing at Bournemouth as well, we're a bit patchy in terms of results, but I do think we have a steady. We're performing steadily, in my opinion. Now, in terms of injured players, Bournemouth, they've got Bafo Diakate, but I did read article yesterday saying that Iriola said that, look, he's training, he's expected to be back in the team. He didn't say whether it's going to be on the subs bench or in the squad, or on the first team, but he is supposed to be back. And I think the same thing for Ryan Christie as well. And Bafo Diakate has also been really, really impressive in that position at centre back as well for them. So he will be a massive positive impact if he is back as well. But yes, obviously Adam Smith and Ennis now are still away with long-term injuries, particularly Ennis as well. Okay, so that's Bournemouth going forward, and FB Ref, and let me know if you guys agree with this, but FB Ref are so let me just blow my nose quickly again. This hay fever is crazy. But FB Ref, and we're going to talk about where we stand on this, have got, for Bournemouth, they typically play in a 4-2, in a 4-2-3-1. They do love a double pivot. They're really, really good with it. This is a similar lineup, and I think I've got this. I think I've got it the same when I'm doing the tactical breakdown. I've probably got exactly the same as what they've got it on here as well. They've got the typical 4-2-3-1 shape, though they go into a 4-4-2 when they're pressing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as well. So, and into kind of a 4-5-1, 5-4-3, 5-3-2 when needed, but more of a 5-4-1 when they're kind of on the back foot. But we've got Evan Nielsen starting at the top with Brooks, Tavernier, and Semenyo. The very dangerous Semenyo providing support. There's other things to show as well, but Alex Scott, and Adams. And Adams has really been impressing me as well. His tackling is super combative as well. And his use of the ball, when he does get it, is really, really good. And their backline of Trufa, Senesi, Milicevic, Hill, and obviously Petrovic from Chelsea. So FB Ref, interestingly, have got Voldemort starting and Jacob Murphy and Barnes. So that's interesting. And always a possibility. I'll do a spoiler alert and say my lineup is a little bit different. And obviously our midfield, the ever-present Gomeres, Tonali, and Joe Linton. There's questions on that though, in terms of like I hope all three of them play, and in my tactical board, all three of them are playing as well. But they have been playing. It's going to be their third game of the week before they might get rested for the Bradford game. They probably will get rested for the Bradford game, but it's going to be the third game of the week for some of them. It'll be interesting to see if maybe one or two are rotated out or not, really. But I'll be interested to see what you guys think. And it's great to see Michael in the chat. God bless you, Michael. Good morning, Phil. Good morning to you, Michael. Let me know, does the morning suit people? That's a bit of a pilot for me. A bit of a pilot project here for me doing a show this early in the morning. Really had to do it because we just had so many games. And I didn't want to mix in the Bournemouth preview with the match reaction to the Barcelona game. I knew the Barcelona game would take up a lot of the time, to be honest. So, yeah. So that's a three in the middle with Chow. We know that obviously Livramento and Hall as our fullbacks. I think we saw Trippier coming off. I think Trippier came off injured, in my opinion, from what I saw. And Chow and Dan Burn as centre backs, not Botman, interestingly. But we know obviously Mr. Shah is having to follow concussion protocols, so he's going to be missing the next couple of games. And Pope in the back. So that's FB Ref's version. Before we get into that, and we've obviously talked about, for those that are just coming to the show, we have talked about our forms coming into the game. In fact, we have not beaten Bournemouth since 2020. I said in the introduction, I said 2020, 2022, but that was the EFL Cup, the league cup. But in the actual Premier League, we have not beaten Bournemouth since 2020, which is wow. Is all I can say. Is like it's been a long time, really. And we talked about FBRF's kind of tactical, who they thought was who, and then we moved on to FBRF to see who they thought was going to start as well. So a couple of questions around that. Before I get into our tactical breakdown for the game, where the game can be won, where the game can be lost, and also Adrian Pickett says, I'd imagine Willock or Miley starting. Yeah, for the midfield, isn't it? Interesting that Miley didn't even get 10, 15 minutes against Barcelona, really. And I don't think he's got. I don't know if he's got any minutes this season. Well, actually, against Leeds, did he play against Leeds? No, that was Ramsey. So interesting to see what happens with Miley. If he doesn't start here, it's probably going to be the Bradford game in the League Cup. Before we get into the tactical breakdown, let's just see in terms of. Well, we are getting to the tactical breakdown. Before we get to the tactical board, our tactical board, let's find out how Bournemouth play. And I want to big up Zedda, who I've recently found out on YouTube is another analyst, football analyst. So I've used things from his show to kind of to talk about Bournemouth a little bit. But I'm going to mix in the Bournemouth. This is Bournemouth versus Tottenham game, the game that they won. But I've also got a bit of material from the Bournemouth versus Liverpool game where Bournemouth Bournemouth lost 4-2, and kind of talk about maybe there might be a little bit of insight about what could be the keys to victory in that game. So part of the reason I think Bournemouth beat Bournemouth beat Tottenham, we were talking about earlier, was their press and their intensity. Now we know all about that press and we know all about that intensity. We found out about it in St James's Park for sure. And what was key about it is I talked about the 4-4-2 press they have. Really, they do generally keep. They like to keep four in the back where they can, and it's almost like it's a mid block really with four in the midfield. You can see that, for instance, Tavernier when Tottenham were playing out, you'd have on their right. I can't see the gentleman's name on there. Brooks, I think it was, marking Spencer. Semenyo is covering the channels to Sarr, with Adams screening the back four. And they will leave Senesi to cover Richarlison, Semenyo next to Porro. And they did it in a way where they got their 4-4-2 press. Obviously, Evan Nielsen leading that press from the front, covering the channels to Bentancur, who would drop back to collect the ball. And you see Alex Scott covering the Paulinho. So both the centre midfielders who would drop back for Tottenham. So you'd have a split between the two centre backs, Van der Ven and Romero, on either side of the pitch. But maybe that split was a little bit too wide, which was what the comment from Zedda, where if Van der Ven wanted to play that ball, it would have to be like a world class ball essentially to get that ball to get it to Romero, and then the two centre midfielders would drop in terms of Bentancur and Paulinho, but they were well covered by Evan Nielsen and Alex Scott. So Forest press is really, and it wasn't without overcommitting themselves, right? So they still were able to have players in the back, and so if Tottenham did break, they had it covered. But the other thing they did is ensure that it was Van der Ven rather than Romero who had the ball, right? So because Van der Ven, although he's an exceptional ball carrier, he's not that technically great in terms of his long passes, and diagonals and stuff like that. So it was very intentional it was by design, put it that way, that Bournemouth were letting Van der Ven have the ball. And if we think back to ourselves, when we look at our tactical breakdown, it's going to make us think about, okay, who's in our back four? Me, and again, spoiler alert, I hope it's both Botman and Chow, who are both very, very good on the ball, who can give the diagonals and carry the ball as well, who can give the long balls, the long passes, short passes, medium passes, as well as carrying the ball. But my only kind of doubt about that is how does it like he's already has to change the back line because of Trippier and Shaw injuries. Is he going to want to change it to the point where he has none of his current recognized first team players? And so, in terms of Burn, for instance, I kind of feel like how I might not want to do that, even though I do think Botman and Chow, especially in this particular situation, will be absolutely important, to have, because I wouldn't mind whether it's Botman or Chow who had the ball in this situation compared to Van der Ven. So again, let me know what you guys think. But that's how their press is going to work. It's a very balanced press as well, like I was mentioning earlier. And I said it, Bournemouth, they keep that high line just like Barcelona did, but they are superbly disciplined, right? Bournemouth are superbly disciplined in that high line. I'm sure they're pretty good at getting their offside traps as well. I don't see too many games where people are breaching their high line and people are seeping through. But part of the reason why people don't really catch them off guard is they do keep four people back generally, and when the ball does come in, they know when to step up into the midfield areas to be able to stop that. So in this case, you can see Triffer stepping up onto Kudos and making sure that he can't turn, for instance, and get the ball to break. They've still got three players there that are back. So Senesi, if he needs to, is ready to cover Sarr, Richarlison, Johnson, And part of it also why Tottenham didn't do so well, and this is obviously in this case is Tottenham is, and this is a little bit kind of similar to what Newcastle have. Sar's a very good. How can I describe him? He is box to box, but he's not. He's defensively better than he is or offensively better, and he's more of a disruptor, an enforcer. Get the ball and gets it on, and Paulinho too as well. Very similar to Joe Linton, right? So they're not the best attacking midfielders, right? Even though they had that sort of responsibility and role, and so they were getting themselves offside, and they weren't the greatest creatively. And if you saw Newcastle against Barcelona, I think we weren't that great creatively either from our midfield areas. I expected a little bit more from Tonali and from Bruno Gomes. I don't know what the reason was for some of their not so good passing, but especially kind of in the final third areas. But that has to change if we're going to have any luck against Bournemouth. Our midfielders are going to have to get a lot more better creatively whilst they're on the ball if we're going to break that line. Adrian Pickett says Hall, Botman, Chow, and Kraft to start for me. Kraft. So you see, is that instead of Livramento, Adrian? So do you see Hall play? Oh, you do. You see. So you say okay. So you see rotating with Hall. Yeah, Hall's been playing a lot of games as well, including international games. So that could be on the cards, to be honest. Not a bad call, to be honest. And yeah, so again, incredible discipline, and when need to be, wherever they've forced, and this is a situation where they forced Tottenham to hit it long. You can see obviously Adams is covering Paulinho, Semenyo against Porro. Scott this time covers Romero. Evan Nielsen covers Bentancur. Brooks covers Spence, and that leaves Tavernier free to press Van de Ven. And all the other players, it's a 4 versus 4 in the back, are covering the attacking parts. The Bournemouth defense is got the Spurs attack well covered, really. So there's superbly different discipline in those areas, right? And so Eddie Howe's going to have to think of ways to be able to get out the back, to be able to break this press. Whether it's going to be Bruno Tonali dropping back and being, getting past the first line of press, whether it's going directly, if we are going direct, we are going to need Joe Linton, because Joe Linton is really good at winning the ball in the air for us. Obviously, or is he going to play Walter Marder as well to do that, even though Walter Marder doesn't really like playing that way always as well. So there's a lot to think about there in terms of who Eddie Howe starts and who he doesn't start as well. And curiously, actually, obviously, we know that Eddie Howe made a number of changes in the 60th minute, including Joe Linton. I hope and I don't think Joe Linton was injured. So maybe he did have this game in mind. So maybe we do see Joe Linton start. And I do think Joe Linton is going to be important for this game for a number of reasons. Yeah, big up. So I wanted to make sure that we put Zeda's contacts into this as well, so people can see. Because check him out. He seems like a decent analyst as well. So make sure you guys check him out. But here, they'd also have Bournemouth would also, but Bournemouth's direct play. Semenyo would be so when Bournemouth are also playing out from the back. When Tottenham had this is Bournemouth's direct play. So when Tottenham are pressing Bournemouth, and Bournemouth are having to play out from the back, Bournemouth are very flexible. As you guys can see in this case, Tottenham have I've gone man to man, and have got Bournemouth covered, and we do that to go man to man as well. Johnson on Diakate, Sarr on Adams, Richardson on Senesi, Paulinho on Scott, Benteke, you can see all the players are covered. Van der Ven, in fact, it's a 3-versus-3 situation in Spurs' half. What Bournemouth are very good at, and again, we've experienced this, is going directly, especially when it comes directly to Semenyo, right? And this is the part where I think Joe is going to be important. When Bournemouth went directly, they targeted Porro as the weaker of the defensive fullbacks. It is better to play against Porro than it is against Romero or Van der Ven in this case, right? And Semenyo absolutely, in my opinion, targeted Porro. And in the game at St. James's Park, Semenyo targeted Livramento. He didn't mind going to the left side. I can't remember who played on our left side, or was it on our right? I think on the left side, I can't remember who played, but he really did target Livramento. I remember that because he was actually ripping him to pieces. And so Bournemouth are very, very clever, and they're not too. They don't mind going direct. They're not gonna force playing from out the back if they can't play from out the back, and it makes sense because look, Tyler Adams, he's decent on the ball. I think his better strengths are his tackling ability and getting around the pitch, but he's not as press resistant or as good on the ball as your Bruno Gomes is, for instance, or Pedri's, should I say, as well. So it makes sense when they go direct. They're not too. It's a very practical move. And when you've got Semenyo, who's that 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", massive pace, power, targeting a stronger, a less strong and slightly less athletic Porro, it makes absolute sense. So even though I think Hall might play or Livramento might play or Kraft might play, I wonder, this makes me also think, does maybe Eddie Howe choose a backline where you've got a Chow, Burn, and a Botman playing? That could happen as well. And so you'd either play Livramento on the right or Hall on the left, for instance. So when we are pressing them, you'd have either Livramento or Hall going up and pressing the four and joining the midfield. But you'd have a back line of 6-foot beasts in Botman, Burn, and Tavernier, making sure that we can't get bullied going forward. So that could be something. I've actually just thought of that whilst I'm talking to you guys as well. So that could be something that could happen. But let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Neil Gunner 93, God bless you. Good to see you, sir. You said how you feel cope with 2 games a week. Now you feel your squad's strong enough. I'm gonna find out in this game, Neil. It's a great question. I think we're gonna find out in this game. We're gonna find out in this game if our squad is strong enough, for sure. Neil says this game you're gonna have to be on it. Bournemouth high pressing team, absolutely. We know, and we felt it. 4-1 defeat at St. James's Park. We were lucky to get a 1-1 draw at their ground. We haven't beaten Bournemouth in the league since 2020. So I certainly, for me, I'm under no illusions. Maybe last year I was a bit deluded, but certainly this year I'm under no illusions about Bournemouth's quality for sure. Right, so keys to victory. So we just talked about how good Bournemouth are under press. We also talked about how good they are in terms of when they are being pressed and how good they are going direct, especially via Semenyo. And talked about some of the things that Newcastle might want to do if they're going to address Bournemouth when Bournemouth are pressing us. This is where I think a Botman Chow centre-back pairing will be very good for us, who are good at line-breaking passes or carrying the ball out. But also when Bournemouth are choosing to play directly against us, where Bournemouth against Spurs targeted Semenyo versus Porro. If we were to play Hall and Livramento had a hard time against Semenyo, and I think so would Hall. Do we then play more of a 3 big, huge athletic centre-back pairing of Botman, Chow, and Burn to kind of counteract that and play either Livramento or Hall to help us to play out from the back? That is something that Eddie Howe would have at his disposal. Maybe Ramsey. Maybe Ramsey would Ramsey play as well because he's a really good ball playing goalkeeper. But I don't know. I don't know if Howard would go that far. That'd be a real big change. I don't know. It'd be good though. It might be. I'm getting a lot of ideas while I'm doing this with you guys. Ramsey might not be a bad shout, to be honest. Right. So I wanted to mention briefly the Liverpool Bournemouth game as maybe somewhere where there could be keys to victory for where Newcastle, but where Newcastle have some ideas about some where they could get some keys to victory against Liverpool. Again, Bournemouth pressing the 4-4-2 press, which initially was very, very problematic for Liverpool. They even though Liverpool at the time were playing with a 3-5-3 when they're playing out, kind of a 3-5-3 formation when they were playing out. And you would think that obviously Liverpool had the spare man, but despite having the spare man, with the way Bournemouth were pressing, Liverpool had and their work ethic. Liverpool were having a real hard time finding that extra man in midfield, and that forced Liverpool to go long, where oftentimes the likes of Diakate and others were winning those 1v1 duels against Ekatike and others. And so Liverpool were having to find a solution going forward to try and beat who is it? To try and beat Bournemouth. And what they did was they had Szoboszlai dropping in. Can I find him? Yeah. So if you go to the right of the screen, let me take this. If you go to the right of the screen, they had Szoboszlai dropping in, and you can see him dropping in right there in the center. And what happened instead was when you had Szoboszlai dropping in, you can see the centre back pairing of Van der Ven, who compared to Spurs are far closer together, right? Compared to Romero and Van der Ven, both Konate and Van der Ven are far more close together. Even though there's a split, they're still far more close together. With Szoboszlai dropping in, and what that allowed is their fullbacks and Kirkers and Frimpong to go further up the pitch. And so that 4-4-2 press, and McAllister would be also dropping in a little bit, but just in front of Szoboszlai, with Wirtz in the center. In the center, and what that allowed was for Liverpool to be able to move the ball out in that build-up play. It gave them a lot more space, so it gave them a lot more reference of Kirkers and Frimpong, as well as Van Dijk. In this case, it was Van Dijk who got the ball out. So Szoboszlai drops in. He initially got the ball to pass. The 4-4-2 press is triggered. He gets it off to Van Dijk, who has a little bit more space to run into, and it forces the second press, Bournemouth second press from the midfield, to have to question themselves: are we going to have to step out to Kirkes? But if we do that, we leave gaps in behind, or do we drop back? And in this case, Bournemouth chose to drop back, and that gave space to Van Dijk to go further in, and to have a lot more choices in terms of who he's going to lay out, who he's going to lay the ball off to. So it sounds simple, but again, it took Liverpool, the quality of Liverpool, to be able to address that situation. And it's something that Newcastle are going to have to do themselves. We talked earlier how Spurs try to do that in terms of playing the ball from the back. They had one of their centre midfielders playing out from the back, but Paulinho, I think it was both Paulinho and Bentancur, but they weren't able to handle it as well, partly because of the position of their centre backs, but partly because, again, I think the quality they were showing on that day wasn't very good. Whereas I think it was a bit different for Liverpool, and they were able to break that press. They didn't do it enough though, but they were able to break that press against Bournemouth, and it's something that I think Newcastle are going to have to take forward into this game. So, speaking of that, and again, I'm going to blow my nose a little bit. Apologies for that. I've got a mixture of hay fever and a cold, I think, going on for me. So, taking all that into account, let's get onto the tactics board and see where Newcastle can Newcastle take the lessons from before, but also take the lessons from Spurs and Liverpool in what we can do to try and beat Bournemouth. Before I do that, I think we've got someone in the chat as well. Leon Oliver, good to see you. God bless you. We are 5 games in. We should rotate against Bradford. Yes. Yeah, we'd see a lot of rotation against Bradford. Absolutely. Bournemouth away will be one of the hardest away games. Absolutely. I really agree with that. It's going to be, it's going to be super, super, super difficult. So we're going to, Eddie Howe will know that. The players will know that. We haven't beat them in a long time. We have to find a way to address how we're going to play against Bournemouth. All right. So, but good to see you, Leon. So as mentioned, Bournemouth love their a double pivot. So it's a 4-2. It kind of looks like a 4-2-3-1 if you just look at it on paper type of thing with Tavernier. I think Tavernier will play. And when we were looking at Tavernier, can play is a utility player. He can play anywhere really. Evan Nielsen, who I rate highly, I think is a very, very good centre forward. And Semenyo, again, who loves playing against our fullbacks. He's been playing and doing well. And Tyler Adams and Scott probably a bit more the creative element. Tyler Adams, the combative element in their double pivot works really, really well from them. I've got Diakate here, but he might not play. It might be he's just coming back from injury. It might be a little bit early for him. We'll see. And maybe Senesi plays instead with Petrovic in the back. Right. So for our starting lineup, people might think, I don't know, I'm doubting myself because I'm thinking let me just start with the starting lineup that I thought would start. And as I've gone through it with you guys, I'm thinking maybe this ain't the way forward. I've got Osola, Elanga, and Barnes starting. Again, because I'm thinking of the rotation. I think Elanga will start because Barcelona, he did miss the Wolves game. Murphy played instead, and he played 60 minutes or so of the Barcelona game. So I think he'll still have, he'll be ready to play for this game. Plus, I think he's more suited to this game. Where I think, for instance, with the way the Vitality Stadium is a smaller pitch, it's going to require a bit of more technical dribbling, where I think Elanga has that kind of ability to do more than Murphy. I think he's going to be better suited for this game compared to Murphy. Osola, only because I thought of Voltemada, understandably so. Had Wissa been playing, I think Wissa would have been playing. And Voltemada is having to adjust. We've talked, it's been well documented, he's cramping up, he's not doing as well. But then again, if we think about it, or I think about it, he played, 30 minutes against Barcelona. Maybe he does start this game, the first 45 to 50, 60 minutes. It might be something that starts. Maybe let me know what you guys think. But I've got a solid starting so far. I do think if Voltemada plays, it helps us tremendously for what I think we might have to do if we're going to win this game. I've risked it in terms of starting Joe Linton, Tonali, and Gomes. I say I've risked it. That's because, for instance, Tonali and Gomes have been playing internationally. This would also be their third game, and it just would not surprise me. It just would not surprise me if Eddie Howe was to rotate some of them. And I think they both finished the Barcelona game as well. But I've risked it, and maybe Eddie Howe thinks that he'll rotate them for the Bradford game. That might be something to do. Maybe they've got enough in the tank to play this third game, so I've risked it in that sense to play all 3 of them together. But again, I would not be surprised if at least there was a change somewhere in that midfield. But again, we need all of them because as I mentioned, for instance, Joe Linton's strengths, not only not only their ability to meet the combative nature of Bournemouth, but also when we choose to go direct, you need the likes of Jordan. If Baltimore isn't playing, especially, we don't have. If we wanted to go direct, Osola isn't the greatest in terms of necessarily winning the ball or getting it on his chest. Joe Linton is, and so I think Joe Linton is going to have to be crucial. It's crucial that he does play, in my opinion. And we're going to need some even though we didn't see much of it against Barcelona, we're going to need some creativity and some composure on the ball in terms of Bruno and Tonali. And I don't know. I think Willock has his strengths. I don't think that's one of them necessarily, although he's more of a runner with the ball. You might see Willock instead of Joe Linton, but we lose that aerial ability, in my opinion. And Miley has just not been featuring for whatever reason. I'll be curious to know if he starts this game. But again, let me know in the chat, guys. What do you think is happening with Miley? I can't figure it out, to be honest. And in the back, I have got Hall and Livramento started, but I think I might rejig that. Knowing what Bournemouth do going forward, I might want to rejig that. I think I might play. Let me see. I might take off Livramento and where's Burn? Burn might still play. And it would kind of look like this. Chow at right back. And I'll show you how it goes when we're out of possession. So kind of like this to be able to meet the Semenyo threat, especially when they go direct. And because I think we'll play 3 in the back essentially. When we need to. I think we'll play 3 in the back when we need to, and I'll speak about it a little bit more. We'll play 3 in the back when we need to. And you'll have Hall, if I have a Hall or Livramento playing going forward with a 3 in the back of Chow, Botman and Burn. And I think they'll be meeting the Brooks, Evan Nielsen and Semenyo threat. I think they'll be good enough to do that. So that's my initial thought about that. So I've kind of just changed it into that. So let me take that off. So that's just them in a lineup. Let's talk about that Bournemouth press and how Newcastle are going to have to work their way out of it. But before I do that, I think we've got a few folks in the chat as always. And folks, we've got 9 or so people watching the chat. I don't know how many likes we've got, but I hope we can break that 10 likes barrier. Would be absolutely phenomenal. Thank you again for joining me early this morning. Good to see. Yeah, big up to you, Leon. Neil says that Scott had a good English player. He is. I think Newcastle were looking at him a lot before he went to Bournemouth as well. So he's a good player. Neil says Voldemort hold up could be needed. Yeah, it's especially if Joe Linton doesn't play, we're going to need Voldemort. And I think we're going to need Voldemort and Joe Linton, to be honest with you. I'm even thinking about taking off Osola now. Honestly, I'm gonna start Voldemort, but we'll see how it goes. Neil Gunner says, "Does Newcastle generally start slow in away games, or am I making this up?" We started we started really well against Villa. Leeds, from what I can remember, that was a difficult game. When you say slow, do you mean that poorly? I think we started generally okay. We're not like a trait off our trait. We're a lot more practical. We're a lot more balanced. We try to be on the front foot, like from the kickoff against Villa. We hit it straight into. We're doing this rugby thing where we're just hitting it straight into the sidelines, and that allows the team to go into the opponent's half. So, yeah, I think you're not making it up. No, sometimes we do, but I think that's because we haven't been able to rotate. Whereas I do think we're able to rotate a lot more now. So yeah, I think we're a little bit better than that this year so far, Neil. Smokey, good to see you. God bless you. Good morning to you, sir. Good morning. Let me know how you guys like this time. Miley says Miley should be a 6. I don't. Yeah, it's for this game, or do you mean like generally? I think so. It'll be interesting to see if he starts this game. Honestly, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know where he's at with Eddie Howe. We had that whole situation with Fabrizio Romano was reporting that he wants to go on loan, and there was other stuff as well going on. So I don't know. I think I get the sense there's a bit of discontent with Miley at the moment. Rob Taff, good to see you. God bless you. Elanga likely to start, gents. Yes. I do think Elanga, his profile, he's a little bit more, he's obviously, I think he's a bit more dynamic with the ball in terms of dribbling and carrying the ball than Murphy. And on a small pitch at the Vitality Stadium, I think that would really, really suit us. So I think I've got Elanga starting. I've got a Sola starting mainly because of I'm more concerned about the rotation for Voltemada. But Voltemada played only 30 minutes against Barcelona, and it was the last 30 minutes. I'm going to take a risk and say Voltemada starts. And so does Joe Linton. I'm taking a bit of risks that I think the midfield will stay as it is, even though they've played a lot of games so far. And I think Voltemada starts. I think we need Voltemada to start. Hopefully he's fit enough. And I've got Hall, Burn, Botman, Chow in the back with Pope. I think the Ramsdale will be good for this because of his ball playing ability, but I don't think he starts. So let's see how we're going to see the Bournemouth press. You got that 4-4-2 press always. So say for instance, who should we have the ball? So say in this case, the ball is with Botman. We'll see how this works so far. I'm working it as I go along. So we've got the Bournemouth 4-4-2 press. You see the 4-2 going out. You'll have Alex Scott, Adams, and they'll try to shift us to a side where they think to a player that we don't want to have the ball. So that'll probably be Burn, right? So you'll have Adams on Tonali, Evan Nielsen on Botman, Scott on Joe Linton, and that leaves a space for Tavernier here. Semenyo would push up against Mr. Malik Chow. They still like to keep the 4 in the back, so they'll keep Senesi and Mihailovic against Voltemada here by himself. Brooks will try to push up as well here with Trafford here. So it's a very, very aggressive press. Adams will have the freedom of either marking Gomes, whilst Tavernier tries to keep the passing lanes blocked to Tonali. And then Nielsen will be very aggressive, and he'll try to block the channels to Botman. And Semenyo will be marking Malik Chow. So it's a very aggressive press. The whole idea is to force Newcastle to be able to hit the ball long to a Barnes where he's got at least, they'd have maybe 2 midfielders, 2 centre-backs marking him and to win the ball off him, or to a Voltemada who hopefully can hold up the ball, but again, he'd have 2 centre-backs marking him, or to, and the Langer again, would have Hill there marking him as well. So the whole idea is to force Newcastle to go direct so Bournemouth could win the ball back quickly, recycle it, and then recycle the ball and then just start their attack all over again. So what can Newcastle do? So similar to what Newcastle like to do generally is to have the centre-back split as well. And you'd have Botman and Burn in this case splitting, which doesn't always matter to Bournemouth. We saw that against Spurs, and you'll have Hall pushing up here as well. The idea being that you have an option for Burn to either go to Hall or to Burn, or if he's really good, over the top to Chow. There's three things wrong with that already. Evan Nielsen obviously will be there to try and block the passing lanes to Botman. Tavernier would have Tonali marked. Alex Scott will be on Joe Linton. And Brooks will be free to either mark Hall or to press Burn. The idea being, again, for Burn to go forward. And the other thing is, do I want Burn on the ball? The answer is no. The answer would be no. The ideal person I want on the ball is Botman rather than Burn. Because of his ability to break. I trust Botman to be able to hit this directly to Burn, even on the ground, for instance, from Botman to Barnes, and for Barnes to link up that play with Hall, for instance, in this type of case, right? So that would be the thing to do. That's what they'll try to do, I think, as well. But in that case, I think I also see the way Bournemouth might, in that case, try to press is to have Tavernier, instead of Tavernier, so instead of Tavernier marking Tonali, you might see Tavernier coming out to block the passing lanes to Botman, Evan Nielsen marking Tonali, and this forces Burn to have the ball in this case as well on this other side with Chow, and where Chow, Bruno, Tonali. So again, the idea is to have the centre back who is not as who's worse on the ball compared to the others. So that's something for Newcastle to sort out, right? If they were playing a Botman and Burn in the back. The alternative is not to play Burn. The alternative is to play Chow and Botman in the back. And I'm still figuring this out. And have Burn, for instance, off with Livramento started instead, if Livramento's fit. Because in either case, what you have is two ball-playing centre-backs. So Chow, despite the Bournemouth press here, has the ability, and we've seen this against Bournemouth, to carry the ball if he needs to. To carry the ball if he needs to, and to cause a situation. Maybe Bruno creates a passing lane by moving to the other side, and you get these type of gaps here where he can get the ball off to Elanga, and we can play out from the back. So he has that ability to get past players as well. So if Evan Nielsen comes to press him, he has the ability to get past Evan Nielsen and get the ball off to Tonali. And again, you get these type of openings. Chow also has the ability, just like Botman, similar to Botman, is to do line breaking passes or to do switch plays when he needs to hit the ball directly. So you can have a situation where you get Joe Linton joining the front line. Scott has to change to go for him, and you'll have Chow hitting it long to Joe Linton, who can win the ball into the air. You can have a Joe Linton Volterada. Their height difference and their ability to win the ball in the air will be crucial. So even if Senesi and others pressing with Barnes and that joining, you can see them still being able to win these type of aerial duels. My only problem with it, and it's not with Chow at all. My only issue with it, as I'm talking to you guys and thinking about this, is and we're going to talk about it and then when we're pressing Bournemouth and the matchups of Semenyo versus Livramento or Semenyo versus Hall. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So the alternative is, and people might not like this, but I can see why we would do this, is Hall doesn't necessarily play, but Burn does. Burn goes back to that. Do you remember when Burn played in that left back situation? We might have Burn playing in the left back role instead of Hall, and that might be heresy saying this. But you guys remember when Hall did play, when Burn did play at left back as well. The idea isn't about Burn. The idea is always about us being able to play out from the back, right? So in this situation, say this time is where we're looking to get the ball off we'll have a familiar centre back split. So again, so say it's Botman that's got the ball. On this occasion, instead of Evan Nielsen marking Tonali, Evan Nielsen will look to block the passing channels to Chow. Tavernier will look to block the passing channels to Tonali and or press Botman, similar to Brooks. But Botman is very, very good on the ball. So Botman has the ability to make these line-breaking passes, but also to carry the ball to the point where he can force either a Scott, for instance, if Scott goes out to press him, he leaves Joe Linton open. Botman has the ability to get the ball up to Joe Linton. Very similar, if Tavernier goes out to meet him, you can see Tonali dropping back here, the ball going off to Tonali, and us being able to break the ball out to from that first line of press. Botman has the ability more than Burn does, right? And if, for instance, or if Brooks goes out to meet him, Botman has the ability again to either to carry the ball a little bit further forward, bring it off to a Barnes or to a Burn if necessary to break that first line of press of Bournemouth. So that's where I see the advantage of being able to play Bournemouth as left back. So the idea of being able to play out from the back isn't so much on Burns' shoulders type of thing. The other, which is what Liverpool done, is to be able to break that 4-4-2 press. Instead of Szoboszlai will drop back in between the centre backs. In this case, it will be Tonali. So it's Tonali who would drop back. Oh, lost my thing there. Tonali would drop back. You'd get Bruno not too far away, Evan Nielsen following him. You'll get this type of situation. Tonali would drop back. Joe Linton kind of maintain his place here. And what you would have is a situation where the our centre backs can go a little bit more forward. Tavernier, in this case, I think it won't be Tavernier. Say it's Tavernier this time pressing Tonali. What would happen is you've got a second, he would have an outlet either through Chow or through Botman. He can get the ball off to them. Brook has a choice now. Does he go and try get onto Botman, but then leave the gap off for a Burn? Or does he fall back? If he falls back, Newcastle beat the press, and now Newcastle are able to push up with the ball. If Brooks does go for Botman has the ability to be able to get the ball out to Burn, and again we kind of press. So that's one way of beating it. Obviously, we have less people in midfield. In that case, you'd have Voldemar maybe dropping in a little bit, but the whole idea is to be able to play the ball out from the back, and to make Bournemouth have to disrupt their lines a little bit, and to push up in a way where they leave gaps. So that's my initial thoughts. I am uncomfortable about playing Burn in the left back again, especially when I've got Hall and or Livramento available, but I'm just trying to think outside the box of what Eddie Howe could do. The other idea Eddie Howe could do is not play Pope and play Ramsdale instead. Because you've got Ramsdale, you've got a ball-playing goalkeeper who's able to... So Tonali wouldn't have to drop it back so much. So you've got Botman again. Botman and Chow in the back. You've got the usual... Bournemouth press. Let me put Voldemar back up here. Ramsdale has the ability to either hit the ball directly long to Barnes and others, or to bring the ball out a little bit and ask Tavernier the question, rather than Tavernier has to, in this case, Tavernier, if he looks to book the channels to Botman and not come out, what that allows is for Ramsdale, who's good on the ball, to come out, and it gives the option of a Tonali coming in, of a Bruno coming into play. and he's able to get the ball off to them. Even in this case, if Tonali comes out, Tavernier is trying to block the channels to Botman. Say, for instance, Scott tries to come out, then he leaves the space open for Joe Linton to get the ball. If Scott stays where he's at and Brooks comes out, he leaves again space for Barnes to drop in or for Burn to drop in and a little bit more for Ramsdale to get the ball out to them. And in that case, Burn, if Ramsdale plays, for instance, I don't think we need Burn. I think we're better off having Hall, who's much more better on the ball. So that could be the better alternative, in my opinion. So we can still have Botman, Chow, Ramsdale with Hall and Livramento. That I'm kind of working into what could be our better starting lineups as well. As an alternative. But again, I'm thinking about when we're also pressing, and before we get, but why I continue to kind of keep on with Burn is what happens when we're pressing Bournemouth and Bournemouth go directly to us. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. I know we've got a few folks in the chat, so let me make sure we get to the chat as well. But guys have been absolutely fabulous this morning. Leon says, in general, I think Miley's best position is a 6. I think I repeat, yeah. I don't disagree. Neil Garner says, I heard a few Newcastle fan wasn't happy with Bruno so far. What do you think? He had a tough game against Wolves. Otherwise, the other games he's been very, very good. Had a tough game against Wolves. Wasn't at his best against Barcelona. And I think partly that's to do with the fact that he's been playing a lot of games in international break and everything else. But he's been our most consistent player in general, and I do think he'll get back to form soon. But yeah, he has had tough games. Bernard FB, you can't. That's a death trap. Only if you look at how I played it from out the back, it's still doable. It asks a different question. I think it's still doable. And I think with a Ramsdale as a goalkeeper, I think it works a little bit better. Neil Garner says, I will play Ramsdale. These kind of games, high energy, loud atmosphere, his bag. Absolutely. And his ball playing ability as well. Ramsdale can play. Exactly. Ramsdale can play from out the back. So I can see the virtue, I can see the benefit of having Ramsdale play instead of Pope. All right, so why do I persist with Burn? Let's talk about us pressing Bournemouth. Us pressing Bournemouth and what Bournemouth would love for us to do. Brooks is here. Tavernier is here. Brooks is here. Who's missing? Semenyo. Semenyo is here. So we press. Voltamada here. So let's get the ball off to these guys. So say, for instance, Newcastle go for a man-for-man press, which I don't think, which I'll be surprised if we did. Let's figure this out. So Bruno and Adams, Tonali on. Let me see. Where would Jolinton go? Jolinton possibly here on Senesi. Tonali screening the back 4 on Tavernier. Livramento here on Hill. No, not Livramento, sorry. Ilanga. So here's what I'm thinking and why I think Botman and Burn may be the answers here. And my main reasoning is, say we go for a man-for-man press. So Joelinton on Senesi, Barnes on Trafford, Voltemada on Mihailovic, Bruno's marking Adams, Tonali on Tavernier, as well as screening the back four. Even here, Burn has the ability to. Why am I playing him? Not Chow. What am I missing here? Yeah. So Livramento here, has the ability to be able to press as well, or even inverting and allowing Tonali to press even higher, allowing Tonali to press Scott and Joe Linton here. So maybe you'll have even Livramento covering Tavernier. So we've got a three in the back against them. What Bournemouth love to do is to go direct. So either Nielsen, Brooks, and others. So 1v1 Burn against Brooks, I don't mind it. Botman versus Evan Nielsen, I don't mind it. And the main threat, Semenyo versus Chow. I back this in a 1v1 more than I back Livramento. More than I back Livramento and Semenyo in a 1v1. And that's my primary reason for playing Burn. Really. You can argue that you can still play Livramento instead of Burn, even on that left side, because you can just change it and have Livramento against Brooks. But what Semenyo loves to do is to swap. So I think Semenyo is going to look for avenues where he's going to look for the weaker fullback, and that's Livramento, right? So that's why I've still got Burn. I think Burn will probably do a slightly better job, even if Semenyo decides to change. I think Burn does a slightly better job against Semenyo, especially if the ball's in the air. So even if Semenyo is not having any joy here against Malik Chow, and he swaps over to Brooks they swap over here, and the ball goes directly to Semenyo. The first thing is to be able to beat Burn in the air. That's not going to happen. The second is, does the ball go on the ground? Possibly. Okay, Semenyo chases it. You still got the likes of Livramento with the pace to be able to match and to ensure that. So all Burn has to do is to keep Semenyo on the flanks. And if Semenyo does decide to turn in, you'll have the pace of Livramento to be able to deal with him there. So there is that hope and ability to be able to do that. Either a Livramento or a Tonali, depends how they want to press. That'll be my way of being able to stop it, to be able to block it. So I know that Burn isn't everybody's cup of tea at left back, and I certainly understand the doubts over that. But I just think we're gonna have to try something a little bit different against Bournemouth. Knowing how we can't base our whole game around Semenyo for sure. So if we can't just, if it's going to hurt us playing Burn in the back three, especially from the build-up play, then you don't just change your whole backline just for one player. But sometimes you might have to do that as well. But I do think this is the best way to be able to combat the various strengths that Bournemouth have. One, which is to be able to hit the ball and play directly. The second is also to deal with Bournemouth when Bournemouth are pressing you, is to have a backline of a Botman, Chow, Burn, and a Livramento or a Hall to be able to play the ball to play the ball from back up from the back line. I think that would be the better kind of choice for Newcastle United. So it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if Hal does it, I'll be super, super happy with that. All right, so let's get onto the predictions. Let me know what you guys think. But before I do that, let me read the chats. And guys, send in your predictions, by the way. Let me know what you guys think the scoreline would be. I'll be really, really curious to know what you guys would think of play. Anfield the Red. it's going to be a good match with a lot of goals. Semenyo will get 2 GA at least. At least, wow. But I also see you guys getting 2-2. So it's a 2-2 draw. And you know what? I'll take that. I'll take the Anfield Red. Anfield the Red. I will take that. I will take a 2-2 draw if you ask me right now. Because I think Bournemouth are a really, really good team. Brandon Moxam says, good morning. Good morning to you, Brandon. A few folks I haven't seen in chat before. And I think it's because I'm doing a morning show. It's my first morning show. So please, folks, do like, share, and subscribe. Let me know if you like it. If you like morning shows, it might be something I do more consistently going forward. I'll be really curious to know what you guys think. Neil Gunnar says, isn't Hall better with inversion? He has it, and that's why you know what, you're right. You are right. It is either a Hall or a Burn for me. Either a Hall or a Livramento for me. So you're right. You're absolutely correct on that. And it's a good rotation for Livramento. You're absolutely right. I think Hall would be the better. Would be absolutely the better in terms of inverting in either case, whether we're playing from out the back or we're having to defend, defend a direct play, or if we're playing from out the back. You're absolutely correct on that. So Hall probably does get a start. I probably makes up my back line really. Hall, Burn, Botman, Chow. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Neil Gunnar says, I think Hall better shout for possession. Yes. 2-2 draw for you too, Gunnar. Gunnar, so morning shows much better. Glad you enjoy it. Glad you've enjoyed it. Make sure you guys hit the like, share, and subscribe. All right, predictions. What is my predictions? Bournemouth are a really good team. And there's a lot of ifs in terms of what I'm saying. Does Voldemar start? Can we keep the same free midfield, which would be crucial? I hope we can. Does Ramsdale start? I think Ramsdale starting will be super, super good for us to win this game because of his ability on the ball. I'm going to go. I did the same scoreline for the Barcelona game, but and this might be the fan in me. I'm going to go for a 3-2 Newcastle win. I think Newcastle in this new team, in this new squad, do have the ability to be able to have answers for some of Bournemouth's questions from their press and from their direct play. And should we match their energy and their intensity, I think we have just about the more quality. I'm going to back Newcastle for the 3-2 win, as unlikely as it sounds. But it's good to see a few folks already give their predictions of 2-2s, a lot of those as well. Final comment from Neil Grass. Do you think Howe feels blocked when he comes into Bournemouth with his past ties because his record really not good there? That could be a possibility, Neil. For me, though, I just think Bournemouth are a really good team. And Bournemouth, we've also lost to teams who play not too dissimilar, like Fulham, in the same manner. Those mid-blocks, those presses, they've really helped us. They really hurt us. So there's a bit of a theme there. And I think that's more significant for me than maybe Howe's kind of having a mental block, but it's certainly a possibility. All right, folks, you've been absolutely phenomenal joining me in the show this early in the morning, helping me do the tactical breakdown, sending in your predictions, engaging in the chat as you always do. You've been absolutely phenomenal. I think Newcastle can win this game. It's a bold prediction, especially after we haven't beaten Bournemouth in 5 years. I think we can win this game 3-2. And let's see what happens. How are the lads? And always, folks, make sure you look after yourself. And God bless, folks.